Hey Merfolk fans, I'm Joe. Thanks very much for joining me today. If you'd like to support my channel, please check the link above to my Patreon page. I'm here with a replay of the first round of a modern competitive league. I had been playing in a few friendly leagues after making the switch back to mono blue from tropical blue-green Merfolk. But I'm starting to feel great with the deck again. It feels really smooth. I've been just winning pretty often, so feel like it's time to jump back into the competitive leagues. And as I said, this is round one. The opponent won the die roll, and it's going to be on the play. He mulliganed to 6, he or she, and I'm going to keep this hand, and the opponent put a card on top. So mull to 6 with a card on top. This is a pretty nice opening hand. We're going to want to hit another blue source pretty quickly, but we should have time to get there. So opponent gets a breeding pool off a Windswept Teeth and goes for Serum Visions. So this might be Infect. That's sort of my guess at this point. With the Serum Visions, he went top-bottom. Another Island Walk Lord is a little bit clunky. Hopefully we'll have something to use Spell Pierce on, but if it's Infect, I'm doubting that I'll get that chance. However, seeing a Mountain, it's probably not Infect anymore. People have been brewing Temur, green, blue, red lists that try to run Jace and Bloodbraid Elf, so at this point I thought maybe it was that. So Ancient Stirrings, probably not Jace and Bloodbraid Elf if they're playing Ancient Stirrings. I am totally confused at this point, but very happy to have a juicy target for Spell Pierce. Ancient Stirrings, a very powerful spell. And yeah, hopefully we'll hit another blue source here. Well, Spreading Seas, not the worst draw. It'll at least give us a redraw at some point. So we're going to play the first Spreading Seas on that mountain. And, well, there's another Spell Pierce. We've only got the 2 in the main deck, so this deck appears to be running a bunch of non-creature spells. Hopefully the Spell Pierce will come in handy. All right, opponent's hitting his life total fairly hard with Windswept Teeth, cracking and getting a Stomping Ground. Untapped. All right, still no blue source. No real plays to make other than drop that Spreading Seas on the Stomping Ground. And there's that second island. I was very happy to see. Now I can hold up Spell Pierce. Unfortunately, the opponent just has sort of infinite access to these fetch lands, so he gets to keep putting his red mana back online. He keeps getting shocks too, untapped. So I haven't done any damage to the opponent, but they're already at 11. Master of Waves a little clunky, and at this point I still have no idea what I'm playing against. We've seen Serum Visions and Ancient Stirrings. All of this untapped mana seems to be indicating that the opponent is trying to leave up red removal. I've got 4 Island Walk Lords in hand, and I'd have to tap all of my blue sources to play them, not able to leave up Spell Pierce. So it seemed like the most reasonable thing to do is to run out Kira here, in case the opponent does have red removal. It's going to be hard for the opponent to get rid of Kira. Lowering my shields for a second, but if the opponent has something like a Jace on their turn, we can deal with him pretty effectively just by getting in with Kira and maybe Mutavault next turn. All right, so at this point, I think I had a good idea about what the opponent was on. There's an energy deck in Standard. I don't know anything about Standard, but I read the general Magic subreddit a lot, and I just picked up the idea that there was this energy deck that was really powerful in Standard, and it made its way in sort of an updated form into Modern. So I think the main win condition in this deck is Aetherworks Marvel, which is a 4-drop artifact, legendary artifact. You pay 6 energy, and you get to look at the top 6 cards of your deck, and I think the text says you can put a permanent from among them onto the battlefield. So basically, this modern version of the deck is going to jam enormous Eldrazi Titans and try to hit those guys on the top of their deck. So Aether Hub, a land that helps that strategy by giving the deck access to some energy. But that's the first energy they've gotten online all game, so a very slow opening by the opponent. But we see them tap 5 lands for Through the Breach. Now this is a big addition to the deck in its modern form. They get access to Through the Breach in case they draw one of those Eldrazi Titans. They can just put it onto the battlefield. So here's old Ulamog, actually, the Infinite Gyre. So he has haste. Now he's not being cast, so he doesn't get to destroy target permanent. He has Indestructible and Annihilator 4. When he's put in the graveyard, you have to shuffle it in, etc. Now, it's pretty rough for us. You know, and at this point in the game, I have to admit I punted really hard. Maybe you guys can sort of figure out how I'm going to punt here. All right, so this has Annihilator 4, and I looked at my side of the table and saw 4 permanents and just sacrificed them. Well, what's wrong with that is that we control these 2 Spreading Seas, which are doing absolutely nothing on the opponent's side of the table. We don't need Island Walk because the opponent is giving us an island already. And we've already drawn our cards off of Spreading Seas. Sure, we'll lose some devotion, but that should be the least of our concerns in response to this Annihilator trigger. If I sack Spreading Seas 1 and 2, and then sack Kira and the Mutavault, I'll still have 2 islands, and I can immediately reestablish a board with my Island Walk Lords. But as it went, I sacked all my lands, and I sacked Kira. So I apologize for the punt, but I definitely learned from watching the replay that I could have sacrificed the Spreading Seas. It would have been a way better play. So actually moving forward, we can imagine that I have 2 islands on the board and see if I might have had a chance to win the game. All right, so I took 10 from Ulamog, and there's an Aether Vial. So having only 2 lands on the battlefield, I'd probably play Aether Vial here and leave Spell Pierce up. So let's say that I play Aether Vial and pass the turn. Can't counter Ancient Stirrings, opponent has too much mana. Let's see what he revealed though. This is a Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. It's a super powerful enabler of Aetherworks Marvel. For 2 mana, you get 3 energy and 3 life. If you sack it by paying 3 mana, you get 3 more energy and 3 more life. So the opponent just drew that off of Ancient Stirrings. And again, they have too much mana for us to effectively counter this with Spell Pierce. So opponent just passes the turn here. I take Aether Vial up to 1. And at this point, I think we probably still have to leave Spell Pierce up with my 2 islands. So I'll just pass the turn and leave Aether Vial up. I wouldn't have to discard here because I already played the Aether Vial. So opponent just passes through their turn. And I drew a 3rd land, so I'm going to play that island. Aether Vial would be on 2. I would have put Cursecatcher onto the battlefield. At this point, I can hard cast one of my lords, and so I'll probably just swing for 2. I don't think I'm going to activate Aether Vial to bring in another lord, just to play around any wraths they might have in the main deck. So at this point, the opponent would go down to 12, and I would have a Cursecatcher and an Island Walk Lord on the table. Opponent cracked the Woodweaver's Puzzle Knot. Now remember, I hardcast a Lord, but I still have 1 mana up for Spell Pierce this turn. Okay, so another Through the Breach, we would have countered that. Now note that the opponent gained 3 life, so they'd actually be at 15, not 17 at this point. I think we're going to see Ulamog again, but remember, at this point I had Cursecatcher and on the board and Spell Pierce up. I probably would have sacked Cursecatcher to get value out of Cursecatcher, and even though the opponents got a bunch of lands, they could draw into something like the Aetherworks Marvel or another Through the Breach that I could use Spell Pierce on. So I would sack the Cursecatcher, I'd still have an Island Walk Lord in hand, and remember, this would have been countered, so the opponent wouldn't have had an Ulamog. As it went, I had to scoop, obviously, because I'm going to get hit for 10 here, on top of losing all my permanents. But remember, I would have countered this with Cursecatcher. I would vial in another Lord at the end of turn, so I'd have 6 power. The opponent's at 15. I'd still have a Spell Pierce in hand with 3 islands. Remember, the opponent's giving me access to Island Walk anyway, even if they do get blockers down. And the following turn, I can hardcast another Island Walk Lord and leave up Aether Vial to bring the other one in. I'd have 2 lords as 4/4s, swinging for 8. And then the following turn it would be lethal, and I'd have Spell Pierce up against anything like Through the Breach, or even Aetherworks Marvel if the opponent happens to top deck that. I do think that they missed the last couple of land drops if I remember correctly. So anyhow, I absolutely could have won that game. So please remember, in response to Annihilator triggers, often our best permanents to sacrifice are going to be Spreading Seas. So sorry about that punt. Game 1 was a very unique way, I guess, is one way of putting it, to start this modern competitive league. All right, look away. If you don't want to see the match result, I'm going to click out of the window here. All right, back for game 2. I'm going to be on the play. This is a keep. Just like in the first game, we want to hit another source of blue mana pretty quickly. Let me go ahead and show you guys my sideboarding strategy. I didn't know exactly what to do against this deck, having not played against it that much. And remember that in game 1, I actually didn't see the Aetherworks Marvel. So I'm not sure if I had sort of fully realized what they were working with yet. I had seen the... Actually, no, I knew that they were on Marvel for sure. But it actually looks like... I didn't think about bringing in the Ceremonious Rejections in game 2. In game 3, I did bring in some of the Ceremonious Rejections, but let's see what I did for... sorry, in game 3, I had these guys. In game 2, I did not. For game 2, I took out all my Spreading Seas because, as I pointed out a couple times, they're a little bit unnecessary since the opponent gives us access to Island Walk. We took out our Kiras because they're not really targeting our creatures. Took out 1 Master of Waves. So that's 5, 6, 7 out. I brought in 3 Negates, 2 Dispels, and 2 Echoing Truths. Echoing Truth seems great after getting hit by 2 Ulamogs. If the opponent resolves Through the Breach and puts Ulamog onto the battlefield, before combat, I can just bounce that guy, effectively countering the Through the Breach with no Annihilator trigger or anything like that. So 3 Dispels, 3 Negates, 3 Negates, 2 Dispels, 2 Echoing Truths. In and... 4 Spreading Seas, Master of Waves, and 2 Kiras out. For game 3, as I mentioned, I'm going to bring in some of these Ceremonious Rejections. So this is a keep from me. The opponent went to 6 again, and they decide to put a card on the bottom. All right, so for my turn, I'm going to open with Minamo into Cursecatcher and pass the turn. Windswept Heath getting cracked for an untapped Stomping Ground, and we see Attune with Aether. Now, again, just sort of reading the Magic subreddit page, I gathered that Attune with Aether was a very powerful enabler in this deck. It lets them hit their land drops and also gives energy to help contribute towards activating Aetherworks Marvel. So I thought that this was a pretty solid target to just go ahead and sacrifice Cursecatcher here. Hopefully on the opponent's mulligan and putting a card on the bottom, they're going to have difficulty hitting their land drops. Harbinger is not blue mana, so all I can do is pass the turn here, unfortunately. Opponent plays a mountain, and so they did hit their land drop, but they don't seem to have any spells to play right now. All right, all we can do is play out Reejerey. It's early enough in the game that I don't really need to hold up Dispel right now. In response here, at the end step, the opponent has a Harness Lightning. Let me go ahead and show you that. It's an instant for red and 1 generic, and they get 3 energy, which again contributes towards Aetherworks Marvel, and they can pay any amount of energy that they have to deal damage to a creature, not only the 3 that they get from Harness Lightning. So if they have like 12 energy, they can use all 12 of it if they need to get rid of 12/12 or something. All right, so we played a Reejerey and it got answered. The opponent's starting to build up energy. They had to use 2 of it to kill the Reejerey, so they're sitting on 1 right now. Opponent plays a basic forest and passes back to me. This is pretty poor. I'm just going to play Cursecatcher and attack with Mutavault here. So trying to get in for 2. The opponent casts Beast Within, targeting my Mutavault. Now I had to think for a second about whether I wanted to let this resolve or not. If it resolves, I get a 3/3 Beast, which is decent for my clock, but at this point, we'd really rather have our lands. So again, I'm just going to sack Cursecatcher. Cursecatcher's doing a lot of work this game already, countering spells. Mutavault will get in, and the opponent will go down to 15. So on their main phase, they're going after my blue mana now. which is really rough. That's going to take us off of our double blue spells. It's going to put us further behind casting Master of Waves, and of course, we're not going to be able to hold up counter magic. I do get a beast. We can swing for 5. I drew another double blue spell. The thing's not looking good this game, really. Opponent plays and cracks a Windswept Heath for a Breeding Pool, giving us access to Island Walk. And they cast Radiant Flames for 3 colors. This card has Converge, so it deals damage to each creature. It's a board wipe with sort of a flexible amount of damage, depending on how many colors you put into it. The opponent has blue, red, and green. He's going to deal 3 damage, and using a board wipe to kill the beast that he gave me. It's pretty clunky, but the opponent's already at 7 life. I'm going to activate Mutavault and get in here. If the opponent has a Lightning Bolt, so be it, but I don't think he plays it. All right, we've got the opponent down to 5. Pretty tenuous board position. There's an island, which means he's got enough mana for Through the Breach. But instead, we see Whirler Virtuoso. I think that there's some janky infinite combo with this thing, but I'm not sure the opponent's playing it. This is just kind of a value card with energy. He gives 3 energy when he comes in, and you can pay 3 energy as many times as you want to create 1/1 Flying Thopters. So definitely happier to see this than Through the Breach in this spot. We would just lose to Through the Breach. Wanderwine Hub is amazing. With 5 mana up at this point, I don't feel comfortable running out anything at this point, so I'm just going to pass the turn. Opponent gets in with Whirler Virtuoso. They have 2 cards in hand, so not working with too much. Drew a Dispel, and at this point, I'm running the risk of falling too far behind, leaving up my mana forever. So having drawn this Dispel and whiffed on land, it's time to play Silvergill and dig 1 card deeper into my deck, hopefully getting closer to blue mana. And another Silvergill Adept will allow me to at least keep digging, but really, really need some blue lands. Opponent flashes in this this aura, basically just neutralizes my Silvergill Adept. It does leave him on the table to contribute Devotion, but it kind of nukes his power, so can't really attack effectively unless I get a whole bunch of Island Walk Lords. This, of course, gives the opponent some energy, so they have exactly enough for an Aetherworks Marvel activation, which is dangerous territory for us. We see a Puzzle Knot, bringing the opponent's life total up to 8, and they just crack it right away. So they're not working with too much in hand, but they are accumulating energy. They're sitting on 1 card here and haven't hit a land drop in the last couple of turns. So presumably they've got like another piece of removal or something in hand. We're going to take 2 more from this Whirler Virtuoso. AEther Vial is solid. I'm definitely going to play that, and then I'm going to play this other Silvergill Adept. I really, really, really just need to dig and get to lands right now. So fortunately, we hit an island. At this point, we've got 2 Dispels in hand to hold up for Through the Breach. And the opponent is going to activate Whirler Virtuoso's Thopter ability twice, I think, leaving 6 energy up to activate Aetherworks Marvel if they draw into it. It looks like they hit a land. And they're going to be pretty aggressive here, getting in for 4. I'm not going to chump the Whirler Virtuoso. Opponent's life total is not very high. We've got an Island Walk Lord. I'm going to take Aether Vial up, and there's another Island Walk Lord. So, a couple options here. We could activate 1 Mutavault, leaving up the 2 blue for double Dispel, in case the opponent draws into Through the Breach. That would deal 4 damage to the opponent, bringing him down to 7. The following turn, we could Vial in an Island Walk Lord, activate both Mutavaults, and swing for what looks like 9. So presumably that would be lethal. But the opponent has been holding up a card for a little while. It could be removal. So, you know, I think I made kind of a rash play, if I remember correctly. I think I ran out an Island Walk Lord here and just tried to get a 2-turn clock, like no matter what, even if the opponent has a piece of removal. Hopefully playing out an Island Walk Lord now will push damage even through removal. I think the better play was actually just to activate 1 Mutavault and leave up Dispel. As I mentioned, I would still have been able to swing in for 9 the following turn, which should have been lethal. So Bit of a misstep for me, and I could get punished here with my shields down. But all we see is a Tune with Aether, which is just going to give him a basic land, and the opponent scooped, so I guess the aggression paid off. But again, even though I won the game, I think it was an incorrect play. You always should do the math on your clock, and I don't think I thought it through all the way during the actual match. I could have very easily held up Dispel and still won with a 2-turn clock. So that was game 2. We managed to get there. Look away if you don't want to see the match result. I'm going to go to game 3 now. All right, so I'm back, and let's go ahead and look at the sideboard again. As I mentioned, I brought in a couple of these Ceremonious Rejections. I almost definitely should have brought in all 3. As it went, I only brought in 2 of them. I took out the 4 C's, 2 Kiras, 1 Master Wave, 2 Reejereys, cutting the top end a little bit to stay lower to the ground. With Aether Vial, hopefully drawing Aether Vial to leave up counter magic. I brought in the 3 Negates again, the 2 Dispels again, kept in the 2 Echoing Truths, and brought in 2 Ceremonious Rejections. In the future, if you see this deck, bring in as many Ceremonious Rejections as you can. Obviously, you can counter Aetherworks Marvel, that's an artifact. You can counter the Puzzle Knots. And if the opponent happens to get up to 11 lands and they try to hardcast Ulamog, you can counter that guy too. So Ceremonious Rejection, an excellent card to have in the matchup. This is a really nice hand. I'm going to keep this. It's got one of those Ceremonious Rejections, and the opponent kept as well. So they're going to open up with a Breeding Pool. We love to see islands. Into Ancient Stirrings. Let's check what they get off that. Island, which is perfect for us. Redundant Island Walk. And we get to just play an Oboro and leave up Ceremonious Rejection. It looks like we drew Echoing Truth for the turn, which is amazing because it can bounce Aetherworks Marvel. It could also bounce a whole bunch of Thopters. It could bounce Ulamog before the Annihilator triggers. So very happy to see that card. We see Aether Hub giving the opponent some energy. And they try to go for the Puzzle Knot, getting even more energy. But to take advantage of my tempo, having left mana up here, I'm just going to cast the Ceremonious Rejection now. Keep them off their energy, keep them off gaining life. And yeah, just use our spells in as timely a manner as possible. I'm going to go with Silvergill after putting Wanderwine Hub onto the board and just reveal another Silvergill. That 4th land is not unwelcome. We don't have Aether Vial, so we're going to want to hit our land drops. Opponent cracks this Windswept Heath for an untapped Stomping Ground, hitting their life total fairly aggressively and just passes the turn. I'm going to start by getting in with Silvergill this turn. Try to take the opponent down to 13, see if we can get him to use some removal on this creature. But no, they just take the damage. So, you know, I'm going to play Cavern here. I don't think the opponent is playing any kind of counter magic, but just to be sure that I draw a card off Silvergill. Another option, of course, would have been to play the Silvergill up with these 2 lands, and if I draw a Mutavault, it's probably a better land drop than Cavern of Souls this turn. But I just absolutely don't want the Silvergill to get countered. So I hit another Echoing Truth. That's not going to be online this turn, but we can have it online as early as next turn. Another Aether Hub, getting another energy, and the opponent just passes. So, opponent's at 13. We've got 4 power on the table. It's a pretty quick clock as it stands, and I've got 2 pieces of interaction in hand. It could be correct to run out a Lord here, but with all this mana up, they could easily be holding up Harnessed Lightning, I think is the name of the card. So let's try to push damage with these Silvergills. And I don't even think I need to commit a Lord to the table at this point. Let them just waste their mana. I'm going to keep my creatures on the table. If they're trying to lure me out into playing a bunch of other creatures just so they can hit me with Radiant Flames, I'd rather avoid that. So opponent hits their 5th land drop, and right on time they cast it through the breach. I feel prepared with my Echoing Truths for Ulamog, which we saw twice in game 1. But instead we see Emrakul, which is terrible for us because this doesn't have Annihilator 4, it has Annihilator 6. Fortunately, having left up my mana, I can flash in Harbinger and bounce this guy. prevent 15 damage, but I can't prevent the Annihilator trigger. And putting this guy back in the opponent's hand is sketchy because he can just through the breach again. But I think it's our best option because if we put Harbinger into play, we get to keep a land on the battlefield after the Annihilator trigger. We're going to bounce Merfolk and then sack everything except one of our lands. I think I'm going to keep Oboro because if the opponent tries to like beast within it and we happen to have it untapped, we can just return it to our hand. All right, so I'm just going to play this Harbinger here and try to establish a clock. The opponent wants to use removal, they're going to use it on a less important creature. So there it is. Harness Lightning, dealing with the Harbinger. And the opponent's down to 3 cards in hand. Land is awesome. I'm going to play a Lord of Atlantis. And that's a 2-turn clock by themselves there. Opponent, I think they destroyed one of their Aether hubs to get a 3/3 Beast. Showing the versatility of Beast Within. Okay, opponent plays another Breeding Pool, Ancient Stirrings. This could be pretty powerful. Let's see what they hit there. Oh, so they hit Aetherworks Marvel, and they have exactly enough mana to get it onto the table. So there is the namesake card here for the Aetherworks Marvel deck. Yeah, and it's not you may play a permanent, it says you may cast a card, so I guess lands don't count. You may cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost. All right. So we want to win pretty quickly here. We've got the Echoing Truth, of course, but they've got a whole bunch of lands here, and they're only on 3 energy. Another Master of Waves is really clunky because we only have 3 lands and we don't want to tap out anyway. With them on 3 mana, I think we might have enough time to get one more Mutavault activation in before we really need to hold up Echoing Truth. So I'm going to crack in here for 3, bring the opponent down to 6, and see what they do on their turn. All right, here is a second Aetherworks Marvel. Now remember that it's legendary, so playing a second one is going to kill one of them when it enters the battlefield. This is pretty cute, actually. They get 2 triggers, I guess, from both Aetherworks Marvels saying that they get energy when a permanent is put into the graveyard. I didn't realize it would work like that, but they are going to get 2 energy off of that. All right, and they just passed the turn. They currently have 5 energy. They're 1 away from being able to spin Aetherworks Marvel. Drawing a land was incredible there because now I can continue attacking with Mutavault and still hold up Echoing Truth. If the opponent tries to hit the Lord with a Harness Lightning, that's going to use some of their energy. Actually, not really. They're going to net 1 because Harness Lightning gives them 3. That would be pretty bad for us. We'd have to think carefully about what to do with Echoing Truth because that would effectively deal with both of our creatures if I... maybe I'd have to Echoing Truth the Beast, but then we'd be at the mercy of Aetherworks Marvel. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's go ahead. I'm not putting the opponent on removal here because we didn't see it last turn on the Lord. I'm going to crack in for 3 here, put the opponent on a 1-turn clock after this combat step. And I've got Echoing Truth up, so I had to think carefully about what to do here. I could bounce the Aetherworks Marvel now. That seems poor because the opponent has enough mana they can just play it out again, and if they have some energy generating spell, they can probably play that on their turn as well, like Attune with Aether or a Puzzle Knot. So it's probably going to be better just to sort of wait to see what the opponent does on their turn. Okay. So I paused here and had to think about this for a moment. Now, Radiant Flames with 3 colors means it's going to kill their beast and it's going to kill the Lord. It should be a red flag for us that they're casting this with 3 colors. They could have cast it for 2 and let their beast survive, but clearly they want to kill their beast. And for those of you who don't know, tokens do actually hit the graveyard, so they trigger anything that cares about creatures dying, like, for example, Blood Artist. You know, if a token dies and you have a Blood Artist, you're going to gain 1 life and lose, and the opponent's going to lose 1 life. So if this beast dies, Aetherworks Marvel is going to trigger. The opponent's going to get a 6th energy, and they're going to get to spin this thing and look at the top 6 cards, maybe put another Emrakul onto the table, which would just spell the end of the game for us. So thinking through the options, I can bounce Aetherworks Marvel this turn. It looks like they're probably not going to be able to play it. But if they do magically have a land in hand right now, they could replay it, and then again spin Aetherworks Marvel. But even if they don't have another land in hand, I'm going to lose the Lord to the... If I bounce the Aetherworks Marvel, I'm going to lose the Lord. If I don't top deck an Island Walk Lord, I'm only going to be able to swing for 2. The opponent's going to get another turn. They can just simply replay the Aetherworks Marvel with 6 energy and spin it at that point, which could still be disastrous for us. Another way to go, other than bouncing Aetherworks Marvel, is just to bounce the Island Walk Lord. Of course, I can play him next turn and then attack with Island Walk for 3 with Mutavault and win that way. But the priority here is not letting the opponent activate Aetherworks Marvel this turn or next turn. And the only way to do that is just to Echoing Truth the Beast token. Doesn't seem like great value, but it's really the best play for us here. The Radiant Flame's going to kill my Lord of Atlantis, and I'm no longer on this 1-turn clock. Opponent did not have a land drop to make. I draw another land. I'm going to crack in with Mutavault, play my Wanderwine Hub tapped. I don't need to reveal anything in my hand here. Doesn't gain me anything. And just pass back to the opponent. These have been really strange games. Modern is so super diverse at this point that you can't really expect to only see like tier 1 decks all the time. So the opponent just looks like he drew a land and scooped at that point. So after punting in game 1, Game 1 actually might have been the easiest of all these games to win if I had just sacrificed my Spreading Seas. So hopefully you guys learned a lesson about Annihilator. You should look to your Spreading Seas in response to Annihilator triggers if it comes up. But I did manage to get there 2-1 against Aetherworks Marvel. You should definitely bring in as many Ceremonious Rejections as you can in this particular matchup. It's one of our best cards. Let me know your thoughts on this deck. Let me know your thoughts on the match. Any comments or questions you might have, please leave them below. Check out my Patreon page. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And join me in the next video where I'll be back with round 2 of this Modern Competitive League. Thanks a lot. I'll see you there.